Good morning, everyone. Let's start with the next practical, that is study of diuretic activity of drugs using rats or mice. Okay, so we have already studied about the drugs which produce this activity, that is diuretic activity, and we have studied many classes of it, and also we have studied the pharmacology of each and every class of the drugs. Okay, so the purpose of this today's practical is that to know about the diuretics and antidiuretic drugs. Then we are second purpose is the know the mechanism and use of diuretics, and the third purpose is to know the different animal models which we use for screening of diuretics. Okay, so if we see that the first two points, that is know about diuretics and antidiuretics and know about the mechanism and use of diuretics, we have already covered in the theory. Okay, so the main purpose is the third one is to know about the animal models and how we use these animal models to screen for the diuretic activity. Okay, so terminologies, what are diuretics? These are the agents which increase the flow of urine. Then the elimination of excess urine is termed as diuresis, and the drugs that facilitate this process are called as diuretics. So antidiuretics, these are the drugs that reduce the urine volume, particularly used in the diabetes insipidus. Okay, so exactly opposite actions these drugs have. So ultimate what we are going to measure, you should understand if a drug is used as diuretic, then it should increase the urine volume. Okay, so we have to measure the urine volume in this particular experiment. Okay, so description of this particular experiment, diuretics. Why we have to screen the diuretics? The reason is that they are one of the most widely prescribed drugs. Okay, so these are the compounds which increase the flow of urine. A number of proven measures and drugs capable of producing diuresis in congestive heart failure and in other clinical conditions which are associated with edema, they have been available for many years. The application of diuretics for management of hypertension has surpassed their use in edema. Okay, so earlier on they were exclusively being used for treatment of edema. So what is edema? Edema is accumulation of excess fluid in the body. Okay, so to remove that excess fluid we used the diuretics. But nowadays the more common use of diuretics is in case of the hypertension. Okay, and it is so much so more is that it has surpassed its use in treatment of edema. Okay, so availability of diuretics has also had a major impact on the understanding of renal physiology. Diuretics, they increase the excretion of sodium and water. They decrease the reabsorption of sodium and chloride from the glomerular filtrate. Increased water loss being secondary to the increased excretion of sodium chloride, that is natriuresis. Okay, so we have already discussed this particular point. Diuretics, they basically do only one thing, that they cause excretion of sodium. Okay, so once sodium is excreted, it's the sodium excretion is then followed by the water. As I said earlier, that uh, wherever sodium goes, water follows. Okay, so if we keep the sodium in the renal tubule only, if we don't allow the sodium to get out of the renal tubule into the interstitium and then into the blood, which the process is called as reabsorption. If we prevent the reabsorption of sodium, then what will happen? The sodium will stay in the renal tubule, and as sodium stays in the renal tubule, the water will also stay, and as water will also stay, the volume of urine which is getting excreted, it will increase, and which we call it as diuresis. Okay, so it can be achieved by direct action on the cells of nephron, on the loop of Henle or on a distal convoluted tubule, or indirectly it can be achieved by modifying the content of the filtrate. Okay, so next, the classification of diuretic drugs. We have three classes of diuretic drugs, that is high efficacy, medium efficacy, and weak or adjunctive diuretics. Okay, so in the high efficacy diuretics, which drugs they do come? That is the loop diuretics. And what is their site of action? They act on the loop of Henle by inhibiting the sodium potassium 2 chloride cotransport. And the examples of the drugs include the furosemide, then bumetanide, and the torsemide. Okay, so spelling of the torsemide is bit mistaken. It is Torsemide. It is not Tora. Okay, so just rectify. Okay, then we have medium efficacy diuretics which act on the distal tubule by inhibiting the sodium chloride symport. Okay, so I guess you understand what is symport. Symport is when the electrolytes they travel in the same direction, then it is symport. Antiport is exactly opposite, when the two electrolytes, when they transport or when they are traveling in opposite direction, that is antiport. Okay, so we have two categories, that is the benzothiazines, so that is thiazides. Examples is hydrochlorothiazide, benzthiazide, hydroflumethiazide, then bendroflumethiazide. Then we have second category, that is thiazide like diuretics which are related to the heterocyclics, and the examples are chlorthalidone, metolazone, zipamide, indapamide, and clopamide. Okay, and the third category of drugs that we have, that is weak or adjunctive diuretics. So in that we have three subcategories, that is first one is carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, and it acts on the proximal tubule. Okay, and the example of the drug is the acetazolamide. There are some other drugs also like dorzolamide in this particular category. Then we have potassium sparing diuretics. Okay, so these drugs they act on the collecting duct, and what are its targets? That is two targets, that is aldosterone antagonist, and the second one is the inhibition of the renal epithelial sodium channel. Okay, so aldosterone antagonist, the example is spironolactone, and that of the inhibitor of renal epithelial sodium channel is triamterene and amiloride. We have the third subcategory of drugs, that is the osmotic diuretics, and these drugs they act on the lumens of the nephron, and the examples which we have considered, it is mannitol, then isosorbide, and the glycerol. Okay, so methods of diuretic activity. So a method which uses rats for estimation of antidiuretic potency, it was first described by Byrne in 1931, and this method or modification of it has been used for diuretic assays by most of the subsequent workers. Okay, so that activity which was developed by the Byrne, it was proved to be like a guideline for all other workers to develop their own method. Okay, so investigators who used dog as an experimental animal for assay of diuretics, they varied in technical details much more than those who used rats. Okay, so as a dog is a large animal, experimental animal, that's why the technical details which are to be used for a dog, they are different from the technical details which are to be applied in case of rat as an experimental animal. Okay, so we have two types of methods, that is first one is the in vitro methods and second one is the in vivo methods. So first of all we are going to see what are in vitro methods and then we will see about in vivo methods. So in vitro methods, as the name suggests, these methods, they are to be carried out outside the body of an animal. So we have three methods over here, that is the first is isolated tubule preparation, second one is the carbonic anhydrase inhibition, and the third method is the patch clamp technique. Okay, so the isolated tubule preparation means what? Just like of isolated ilium, we are going to isolate the tubule. Okay, so what we do by isolation, we check the change in the concentration of solutes in the perfusion fluid. Okay, so we have to select a thin tubule segment, that is greater less than 1 mm. We have to dissect from the kidney slices of several species like rat, mouse, hamster, rabbit, etc., and we have to transfer it into the perfusion chamber. Okay, absolute volume of reabsorption we have to determine. Okay, then second method is carbonic anhydrase inhibition. Very simple method. We have to take the carbonic anhydrase enzyme and we have to include, we have to put the test drug along with that carbonic anhydrase enzyme in a medium. Okay, and we have to check whether there is inhibition of carbonic anhydrase or not. Okay, so by some analytical techniques we can determine this and we can perform this particular experiment. Then we have third method, that is the patch clamp technique. Okay, so this method, it measures current across the ion channel. Okay, so what this technique is, that we apply a patch clamp to the part of the membrane. Okay, so this patch clamp, there is one particular what it does, it checks the change in the ion current. It applies that particular a tip, a patch electrode. Tip of it we attach to a single ion channel and we record the movement of the ions across that particular channel, and that recording of that particular movement of the electrolytes, we get us the value that how much, when we give the drug, whether the sodium is moving across that ion channel or not. If you remember, whatever drugs we have mentioned, they block the sodium channels. Okay, they block the sodium channels. So if we attach this patch clamp tip to that particular sodium channel and we give the drug, then the movement of the sodium, it should be decreased, and if it is decreased, then it should be recorded by that particular patch electrode, and that is the basis of using this particular technique. Okay, next we have the in vivo methods. So first is the Lipschitz test, so which is one of the most common test which we use using the rats. Okay, so what we do, we measure the urine volume and also the sodium excretion in Wistar albino rats. Then we have second technique, that is saluretic activity in rats. Again, this activity is most common. The first two ones, they are the most common techniques. So measurements of electrolytes excretion in Wistar albino rats, it is being carried out in saliuretic activity in rats. Okay. Then we have diuretic and saliuretic activity in dogs. So on similar basis, the activities are carried out in dogs. Only difference is that the type of laboratory animal which we are using. In case of earlier two methods, we are using the rats. In case of this, we are using the dogs. Okay. Then we next method is the stop flow technique. So the ureter of the animal is clamped, which allows static column of the urine to remain in contact with the tubular segment for longer than usual time period, and then collection of urine. So this method, it can be performed in different anesthetized animals. Okay, understand this difference between this method and the earlier methods. In this method, somewhat a surgical procedure is needed to be done, but in other, there is no need to carry out the surgical procedure. That's why the earlier methods are preferred over this method. Then we have next method, that is clearance method. So in this, measurement of water and electrolyte excretion, glomerular filtration rate, that is GFR, renal plasma flow, etc. they are measured. Then we have micropuncture techniques. So in this, the measure the changes in tubular fluid reabsorptive rates and the electrolyte concentration is done. Appropriate animal model like that of rat, hamster or dog is chosen according to the site where micropuncture is to be performed. Okay, so let's start with the actual experiment. So the objective of today's practical is to study the effect of furosemide on the output of urine in rats. And furosemide, as you know, it is high efficacy diuretic. Okay, so the principle of this method or this experiment is the screening of diuretics for clinical utility is a matter of practical importance. Normal urine formation in rat like small rodents is very less. Hence, to produce a measurable quantity of urine, the rats are hydrated with sufficient quantity of saline. Okay, so we have to give, or we have to provide the saline water earlier on to this particular experiment. Why? Because normal urine formation in rats is very less, so we have to provide saline before we actually start with the experiment. Okay, so the urine output is increased after administration of diuretics like urea and the furosemide. Okay, so this increase in the volume of urine is determined with the help of simple measuring cylinder, and we have to compare the urine output in drug treated animals with the control animals. Okay, so in control animals, we are not giving any kind of drug, so we have to compare the urine output of the control animals with that of the drug treated animals. The rest of the condition, they will remain the constant. That is, in both the animals we will provide the saline prior to the actual experiment. Okay, and then we will check the volume of urine after the experiment. Okay, then the urine volume in the rats, it can be easily measured by placing the rat in a metabolic cage. So you can see on the right the metabolic cage. Okay, so as per this metabolic cage over here, at this particular point we have to keep the rat. So we have to feed the rat by this method. This is the saline water reservoir. Okay, so by which this rat will have access to the saline water Okay, and whatever urination that rat will do, that urine, it will be collected down over here in this particular flask. Okay, so it will be like a 24-hour reading. So every time, there will be time intervals like 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hour. At that particular time interval we have to collect the urine. Okay, so and we have to compare it with that of the standard or the control. Okay, so the metabolic cage is designed to allow measurement of fluid intake and the urine formation. So it provides a perfect separation of feces and urine through a special design of the funnel and of the separation cone. Okay, so it is not that the rat will only do the urination, it will also defecate. So the defecation or the feces, it should not mix with that of the urine. So there is special care is taken that this particular apparatus will separate the urine from that of the feces. Okay, and that's why it is so special, the metabolic cage. Okay, so the metabolic cage, it contains wire mesh at the bottom, a funnel to collect the urine, and a stainless steel sieve placed into the funnel to retain the feces and to allow the urine to pass into the measuring cylinder, which can be used for numerous qualitative and quantitative determinations. Okay, so requirements. Animals, we have to select Vistar albino rats, whose weight should be between 150 to 200 grams of either sex, that is male or female. Then drug which we are going to use, that is furosemide. The equipment which we require, it is metabolic cages, and the other things we require, that is syringe, needle, graduated measuring cylinder, and a beaker. So the procedure of the experiment, that is we have to randomly divide the rats of either sex with a body weight between 150 to 200 gram into two groups, and each group consists of the 6 animals. So n is equal to 6, it is the number of animals per group. Okay, and we have to name these two groups, that is the control and the test. Okay, so we have to weigh and number the animals of each group. So how to do that weighing, we can do on simple weighing balance, but number of animals, how to number each animal, we have to draw the lines onto the tail of the animal. If the animal is we are keeping one animal at the first number, we have to draw one line. At second place, 2 lines. Like this, we have to draw 6 lines on sixth animal, and we can do it with the help of a marker pen. Okay, so we have to keep the animals overnight fasting. Overnight fasting means what? We should avoid giving the food to these animals. Okay, if we are supposed to perform the experiment in the morning, then we should keep the animal away from the food, like earlier, or in from yesterday, from 10 p.m. okay, in the night. So that becomes the overnight fasting. Overnight fasting, the distance or the time period between the experiment and the last feed given to the animal, it should be like 12 hours. Okay, so we have to prepare the drug solution by adding 5 milligram of furosemide in 25 ml of the saline water. So we have to administer the normal saline, that is 25 ml per kg to the control group rats, and the furosemide solution, that is 25 ml per kg to the test group rats. Okay, so only difference between the control group and the test group is that in that particular saline bottle, in case of control animals, there is only saline water is there, but in case of the test group, we are adding furosemide into that water. Okay, so we have to administer orally with the help of oral feeding needle over a period of 10 minutes in divided doses. After administration, we have to place the rats in different metabolic cages and we have to collect the urine free from feces in measuring cylinder. So note the time after collection of first drop of urine of each animal in measuring cylinder, and also we have to record the total volume of urine collected from each animal in different time interval up to 5 hours. So understand this very clearly, that we have to be present the entire time while we are doing this particular experiment. Why? Because we have to note the time after collection of first drop of urine. So we have to keep looking that at what time the animal urinates first. Okay, so this we have to do for all the 12 animals. So it is not a job of one person, at least two-person should be there at that time. One person should be recording or should be observing, and another person should be recording, writing in the notebook. Okay, so we have to calculate the mean volume of urine collected from different group of animals in different time intervals, and we have to compare the urine output between control and the drug treated groups. The differences among test and control group mean values should be significantly different by using the statistical methods. Okay, so why the difference should be measured between the test and control group? The reason is quite clear, because in test group we are using the drug, we are giving the drug. Okay, so we have to also calculate the percentage increase in urine volume in test group over control group rats as per the following formula, and the formula is the percent increase is equal to urine volume in the test group minus urine volume in the control group divided by urine volume in the control group. Okay, so this formula we have to use to check what percentage is increased in the urine output. Okay, so observation table will look like this. So we have two groups, that is control group and the test group, and we have the 6 animals. Then we have to measure the time in minute after first drop of urine collected. So this observation table should be already drawn into your notebook, so that at the time of reading you will directly put your reading into this particular observation table. Okay, so then we have different time intervals, that is 0.5 hours, it is 30 minutes reading. Then we have 1 hour reading, then we have 2 hour reading, then we have 3 hour reading, and lastly we have 5 hour reading. Okay, so all of these readings we will get from the checking the volume of urine collected in the measuring cylinder. Okay, so measuring cylinder, as it is graduated measuring cylinder, we have to see the corresponding value of the urine which is collected in measuring cylinder, and we have to write down this value in this particular table. Okay, so last column, that is percentage increase in the urine volume, it is not applicable to the control group, but it is applicable to the test group. Okay, so using that earlier formula, we can write down this percent increase in the urine volume in the test group. So here we have considered one drug, that is furosemide. We can consider any other drugs over here. Also, if you have extracted a drug from the plant source and you suspect that this particular drug will cause the increase in the diuresis, and you are supposed to test this drug, then you can use this particular method to test the activity of that plant extract. Instead of furosemide, just replace furosemide with your plant extract and you are good to go. Okay, rest of the procedure it all remains same. Only thing that you are changing is the test drug. Okay, so inference that we have to draw from this particular experiment is that furosemide, like high efficacy diuretics, they increase the urine formation by inhibiting the sodium potassium 2 chloride co-transporter at ascending part of loop of Henle. After administration of furosemide, urine output may significantly increase in test group animals as compared to the control group animals. So, one question should arise in your mind that if we have a plant extract and it causes diuresis, when we perform this experiment, it causes diuresis. But how to determine whether that plant extract is high efficacy, medium efficacy or low efficacy, or the weak diuretics? How to determine? We can compare the urine output with that of the standard, or there has to be some formula with which we can determine the efficacy of that particular diuretic. Okay, so that particular thing is solved in next few slides. So the diuresis test in rats, it is designed to determine sodium, potassium, chloride, water content and the osmolarity of the urine. So all of the samples of the urine which we have collected, they are to be analyzed by the flame photometry for the sodium, potassium and the chloride content of it. So when we compare the control samples with that of the test samples, the test sample must contain the higher amounts of the sodium, potassium and chloride. Okay, so the results, they may be also expressed in the Lipschitz value or the saliuretic activity value. Okay, so what is this Lipschitz value or the saliuretic activity value? We are going to see in next slide. So the Lipschitz test, the Lipschitz value for both urine and electrolyte, that is sodium excretion, they are calculated as below. So one formula is given. So the Lipschitz value is equal to urine output in test animal divided by urine output in control animals. So if Lipschitz value is greater than or equal to 1, it indicates positive effect, and the Lipschitz value greater than or equal to 2, it indicates potent diuretic activity. So the Lipschitz value for the hydrochlorothiazide, it is 1.8, and that for the loop diuretics, it is greater than or equal to 4. Okay, so understand, that's why the loop diuretics, they are called as the potent diuretics, and we have to compare the value of our test extract with this with the Lipschitz value of this established diuretics, and from that we can conclude that whether our diuretic has the medium efficacy or it is or high efficacy or it is of weak efficacy or low efficacy. Okay, from this value we can easily determine, and these values are given. You can go to Google and you can find out Lipschitz value of all the diuretics. Okay, and you just compare your if you have extract, you can compare the value of your extract with this ellipsis value, and you can correlate activity of your herbal extract. Okay, then we have the soluretic activity in rats. So the following parameters, they may be obtained by calculating the different ionic contents in the urine. So first is the estimation of the soluretic activity. So the sum of sodium and chloride excretion is calculated as parameter for the soluretic activity. So it is a simple soluretic activity is equal to sodium plus chloride excretion. So second is estimation of the natriuretic activity. The ratio of sodium and potassium, it is calculated for the natriuretic activity. So the natriuretic activity is equal to sodium divided by the potassium. Okay, so the values greater than 2, they indicate favorable natriuretic effect. Ratio greater than 10 indicates potassium sparing effect. Okay, so we have the potassium sparing diuretics also, we have the natriuretic diuretic drugs also. So by this method we can actually determine whether the drug causes exclusively natriuresis, or it has the potassium sparing activity also. Okay, so these values you can get from the flame photometry. Okay, then third is, that is estimation of carbonic anhydrase inhibition. So the ratio of the chloride to sodium plus potassium is calculated to estimate carbonic anhydrase inhibition, and the formula given is carbonic anhydrase inhibition is equal to chloride divided by sodium plus potassium. It will give us the carbonic anhydrase inhibition value. Okay, so the questions. Now write down these questions in your notebook and find out the answers to it, and submit it as an assignment in the Clevergram. I will wait for another 1 minute for you to write down the questions, and you can submit it as an assignment by this Sunday. Okay, so write down the questions. I am waiting for 1 minute. Okay, so that's all from my side. I should conclude this today's practical. I will try to uh, take more lectures to cover up the whatever loss of lectures that happened in last week as well as this week. I'm not taking the lectures due to some health issues I am facing. So that's all from my side. Okay, so uh, try to solve it as early as possible and submit your assignments in Clever. Thank you.